Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, my parents weren't perfect. I'm not sure if your parents were perfect. Mine were not. However, one of the cool things they did for me is instill in me a love for the genres, which led to me liking to play role-playing games. I still love those genres too. When I was really young, maybe like 3 years old, my dad turned me onto Star Trek, the original series, and it was on reruns by then. I'm not quite that old. But I watched it and loved it. And then he got me a membership to the science fiction book club when I was fairly young. Gave me The Hobbit to read when I was probably 5 years old, and then the other books as I finished that one. And it was cool. I was hooked on the genre, and devoured a whole bunch of stuff. Out of the Silent Planet, Narnia, all those series, etc. And then kind of moved on to other authors. Um, One of the things I discovered not so long afterwards is that those genres, sci-fi, fantasy, I read more so in sci-fi just because I read more of that. Those are excellent media for exploring political, social, moral, cultural issues because you're not constrained by reality. You can push things to the extreme using that kind of what if mojo that goes with those sort of genres. You can strip away any kind of restrictions. You can do things like, do androids dream of electric sheep? You can explore things like, do androids or artificial people, do they have rights, etc. You can go off in all kinds of directions, politically, morally, whatever. That's part of the vibe because it's extreme. There's no limitations. The other, I guess you would call advantage to those sorts of media is they allow a layer of it's not anonymity, but like a little bit of plausible deniability. You can explore issues that may be touchy right now, or explore political situations that might be touchy right now. But you have this uh, ability to kind of step back and say, "Oh no, I wasn't talking about that. This is just a story about elves or robots." And you have some kind of an out. Um, and that's not new. If you look at tons of literature, oftentimes people write about one situation, it's often in history, when they're really talking about what's happening right now. You can even look at ancient texts, some of them very popular, where they're talking about some kind of invasion or occupation or oppressor or what have you, and delivery and whatnot. And they're really not talking about that. They're talking about what's going on currently in their country. But they realize that, should they write about it that way, they're going to get their heads chopped off. So they have to, adopt some plausible deniability and put some distance between them and what they're talking about. For that same reason, though, role-playing games are great exploring these same sorts of subjects. They're great exploring things like, political, moral, social, cultural issues. Um, and as Lee Rimmer pointed out in his video, which this provoked this video response about, keep your politics out of my role-playing game, clickbait title, very tongue-in-cheek. And as Jeffrey MacArthur pointed out in his response video, both of them point out the thing is like, politics are ubiquitous. Once you have two or more people, you're going to have some sort of politics. And you can't get away from that. Even if you have anarchy, like Jeffrey pointed out, that's politics. And actually, let me see if I get the name right. James Simpson posted something in the RPG Brigade. It was this funny little picture of every space RPG ever written, and it's this cute little map and all these different areas of space, and a lot of them are political in nature. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but you get the idea. I mean, it's hard to think of something that's not political in some way, shape, or form. So that's part of the vibe. I think it wouldn't be fun without that. I don't think you do it without it. Period. To me at least, the political situation, the culture, the morality, all that stuff, kind of becomes the backdrop um, in front of which the actual action takes place with the player characters and the various named NPCs and the people you're actually interacting with. Um, but that's just kind of makes the game world real. And then that provides, kind of a context for what's going on in the game. Likewise, at their core, role-playing games are about making decisions. Maybe the decision is, you come upon the giant band of trolls. Do you choose to fight the trolls, or do you strap on your Nikes and run away and hightail it? Or, more subtle, do you carry out that mission from your the guy that hired you or your benefactor, or at some point do you run into some moral ambiguity and realize that this may not align with your personal morals? Maybe more information, new information has been revealed, man. New information has come to light, and you realize, hey, wait a minute, what would my character do in this situation? You find out, just like you and I, our characters may have conflicting values and conflicting motivations. And that's where the game becomes really interesting, because oftentimes we can play as an avatar of ourselves. What would I do in this situation? What would I do when faced with this particular political situation or moral situation, which in real life I find reprehensible or I like? becomes more interesting when you figure out, well, what is this character like, and what would they do in those situations. I love the. I was thinking, like, what do I say about this other post that Wendell Conrad put in the RPG Brigade very recently about do your characters adopt the cultural norms, cultural attitudes of whatever culture they're from, and how do you express that? Um, and it's hard to adopt those cultural norms and cultural attitudes without some kind of culture, without some kind of political structure there. And so you figure out, well, is my character pariah in his own culture, or does he have his own cultural attitude? Has he adopted the cultural attitudes of wherever he's from? But is he conflicted? That makes the game kind of interesting, you know. So, um, the other thing, advantage, to having these political, these uncomfortable or comfortable, situations in role-playing games, all this cultural, political, um, moral, etc. stuff in a role-playing game is you and I, through our characters, get to interact with this in an up-close and personal manner. Maybe in a up-close or getting closer to proximity to these situations or subjects than we feel comfortable with in real life. Um, maybe just because we're not used to dealing with them in that level of proximity. Maybe because sometimes this, would lead us to be in danger of loss of life or limb. And certainly, if these things are pushed to the extreme, like they are in a lot in this genre, that's kind of the shtick or vibe of these genres. Um, so that can be really kind of fun. It's liberating. Not only are there no boundaries in terms of what can happen politically, culturally, morally, but there's no limit in terms of what our character can do because, yeah, we want to play them and they're real flesh and blood people in this fictional world, right? However, they're somewhat more disposable than you and I when it comes right down to it. So this, while you and I might not feel comfortable about dying for a noble cause, our character might, or at least we decide they are. Because heck, it's not us at the end of the day. Let's see if there was anything else clever I really wanted to say about all this. I think really it's just kind of, oh yeah, I mean, there are some people that just are not comfortable with this, and certainly when Lee posted this, the first thing that comes up from a lot of people is, this is really about when people are trying to push their own political agendas on somebody else, and maybe it's game designer, but oftentimes it's game master or other players, where really what the bottom line is, you're selling that Um, my political views, my cultural views, whatever they're right, yours are wrong. This falls right under, same old G's don't be a jerk rule. So, don't play with jerks. Okay, don't be a jerk. That kind of solves that dilemma right there, then and there. Either don't be a jerk, or if the guy's a jerk, don't play with him. The other thing, it's funny when he was talking about the, keep your politics, out of my game. The one of the things that somebody said that was very tongue in cheek, and I loved. I forget who it was. I should have written their name down. They said a lot of times what people mean by that when they say that is keep your politics that disagree with mine, out of the game. And I thought that was kind of funny because oftentimes that is what it is. We get upset because and a lot of times somebody's pushing it. But even if maybe we just come face to face with something we don't agree with, and this reminded me of something. I love old science fiction. The old the big three, like Asimov and Clarke and Heinlein and all these other people from the golden age of science fiction. And one of the things that I thought was extremely funny was that Heinlein tended to take a lot of flack because his political views, as expressed through his stories, were a little bit more right-wing leaning than some of the other people. Whereas the other guys really didn't take very much flack if they happened to be more left-wing leaning. I'm not, I'm kind of middle of the road politically, but I always just thought that was kind of odd and funny. But I think that's part of that whole phenomenon. And so if you hate Heinlein, throw rocks at me. I love his stories, but anyhow, that's neither here nor there. And the other thing somebody else said, and I should have written their name down as well, they talked about the idea that there should be some time in between a touchy political situation and actually inserting it in a game or in literature or whatnot. I don't necessarily agree with that, and I'll tell you why. First off, for the reason I mentioned a while back, that this has been done throughout history. You can veil it. Everybody kind of knows what you're talking about, as long as you're not making this parody, carbon copy of something, and making parodies of people's names and all that kind of stuff. And I'll leave that there. But the other thing is, there is nothing new under the sun. Solomon was right about that, at least. Everything that's happening now, that's happened in the last 10 years, it's all happened before politically, so, and culturally, etc. So I don't believe, for me, that's not a really important thing to worry about. So yeah, politics in gaming, I think is a cool thing, as long as you're not a jerk. What do you think?